So good to be here with all of you today. I want to thank you all so much for joining. This is really exciting for me and for everyone else. So, if I don't know you, my name is Trevor. Can you hear me now? Can everyone hear me? Great. I stopped sharing there, Claudia. That's why. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Trevor Bird. I'm the co-founder of the Inner World Collective. My co-host Lori Ballard, she is not here today, but it's good to have all of you here. And just so that you all know what the Inner World Collective is about, it's a space created so that growth doesn't happen in isolation. We are all IFS practitioners. We all use IFS, and it's really nice to learn in community. And I identify as an IFS nerd. So I like to be in community with other people that can jam on it nonstop. But it's a one-stop shop where you can sharpen your skills. Um, Everything that you experience here today will be inside of the Inner World Collective as resources, as a recording. And if you're not aware what that's about, if you're a member of our paid subscription, workshops like this, our guest speakers are free. And then we have, join as you want if you're not a member. But in our membership, we have 4 consults. We're going to be going up to 4 consultations a month, 2 supervised practice groups a month, 2 demo groups a month, free access to all of our guest speakers. We have one every month. Discounts on every course we offer, and a full library of annotated demos. So whenever you get into stuck points, if you want to see, how would you deal with direct access, or how do I deal with critics? There's a whole bunch of awesome searchable resources for you in there. And it's only $59 and a month. So if you were to go to one consultation a month, that would be $100. And if you go to one demo group, that would be $100. So it's kind of a cost-effective way that we can all help each other out. So if that's of interest, I'll drop a link in the chat at some point that you can check that out. But just some housekeeping before we get started. Please grab a paper and a pen. We're going to be doing some writing. We are going to be mind mapping ourselves, and we're going to be doing some exercises with some volunteers to help kind of bring all this together, because we all know that IFS is best learned when you're experiencing it. This will be recorded, so anybody that doesn't want to be recorded or doesn't want their face out there, you can turn off your camera or just not volunteer for anything. That would be helpful. So we're going to start off with a parts mapping meditation. I want to name that. Susan, did you want to say something? Or are you okay? Great. I just want to name that everything in this workshop is not new information. You all know this stuff. I just have a system that kind of brings it together in a way that might make sense to help you deepen your understanding of the triangle, of the parts, of how they all relate to each other, how we notice it in our clients, and how we can kind of sit with this in ourselves. So I'm going to get started with a little bit of a meditation. We're going to debrief that a little bit. We're going to go into a demo, which I'm going to do as an intake call. We're going to all participate in this. We're going to debrief that. And then I'm going to get into taking notes and how to notice parts before your client even notices parts. So it's like you can like know what's going on for them before they even know what's going on for them. And that's the intention of this, is to bring community together and create a container for learning. So with that being said, I'll invite you all to enter your favorite meditation seat, or however that looks for you. You can sit, lie down, you can leave your camera on or off, whatever helps you be most present. And we'll just begin by becoming aware of our breath, not changing it, not intentionally deepening it, or just notice what's happening inside of you right now. Notice any tension, any resistance. Just see if you can Ask it to soften just 1% so that your learning parts can come online. And we don't really need anything from them. They don't need to be working or doing, but just listening. And we'll take a deep breath in through our nose, filling up your belly, your chest, your lungs, letting your shoulders fall away from your ears. And as you exhale, just let all that tension from the day go. And in your mind's eye, start to create an environment somewhere in nature. Some place that could be real or fantasy that you have visited before, where you have felt calm, connected, whole. An ocean, a mountain, a forest, a beach. And as you begin to create this environment, notice the texture of the ground. Notice the smells in the air. And notice the weather up above. And in this sacred space that you have created, invite in a circle, places to sit, a table, whatever feels right for you, a picnic bench. And just plop it down in the middle of your environment wherever you are. And now on that piece of paper with your pen, this is like a brainstorm of parts. Write down any thoughts that have been present in the past, maybe 3 days, any ruminations, any loops that you've been caught in. And just write down one word to represent that. And if there's several, write down several. Write down any somatic sensations that you have in your body, that you've noticed in your body over the past couple of days. Maybe a tightness in the chest, anxiety in the gut, sweaty palms, an expansiveness in the chest, or a running around the brain. Write down any emotions that you have felt over the past 3 days. Fear, anger, sadness, joy, excitement, disgust, judgment, blame, criticism. I could keep going, but I'll leave it there. And I'm sure you can come up with your own labels for these parts, as many as you can think of. And just any other parts that you've noticed that have been around. Maybe the taskmaster, the pusher. Holidays are always a good place to activate parts, the passivity with parents, or maybe the rage with parents, or maybe the excitement around the holidays and some time off. And just write down as many as you can. Some might have two or three, and some might have 10 and 15, and it's all welcome. All your parts are welcome. And just see if you can invite in all the parts you wrote down into this sacred environment that you created. Notice if there's any parts that are blended with you or have a hard time sitting out in front of you, and just let them know that you see that and feel that if there is. And ask them if they'd be willing to just step 2 or 3 feet in front of you to learn with you and to learn with all of us. And just thank them for letting them know that they're here and present today, that they're alive and well in your system. And if it's okay with them, we're going to start to do an experiential with them. This will not be shared, but it's just for yourself. So you can help to organize your internal world, your internal parts. So when it feels right, just take in one more deep breath, letting the parts know that you're here with them. And as you exhale, I'll invite you back into this room here. So the first thing that we're going to go over is the concept of the IFS triangle. How many of you know the triangle? Awesome. All right, there's actually quite a bit of you that I thought everybody would be like, oh yeah, I know the triangle. So I'm going to share my screen here. Just 1 second. All right. Can you all see this? I'm going to go share. There we go. Can you all see that? Great. So this is the IFS triangle. And this is the basis, the core of parts mapping. This is derived from C. Sykes, who developed the IFS triangle, and it has changed the way that I personally work with clients. So the main things about the triangle, and I help my clients mind map with this when things get a little overbearing or like too much or a lot of parts come in. But we have our managers, right? Just a reminder, our managers, they have the status quo. They look out into the world around us to be accepted. And we have our firefighters, our soothers and distractors, our reactive parts on the other side, and our exiles. And our exiles are the ones that hold the beliefs like I'm not good, I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable. You fill in that blank. But as you look at this triangle, Just see where you can place your parts that you wrote down in that meditation. Where would your parts go on this triangle? I'll give you a minute or two to do that. And managers don't necessarily have to have a big charge. They can just be doing their jobs, just checking off lists. Firefighters, soothers, and distractors can have a disassociative quality to them. The ones who like to scroll, like to numb out. And if any parts of you have felt shame or beat up, those are generally are the exiles. Looks like everybody's still very engaged in their parts mapping. So I'll let that go until I see some people um, look up from their writing. Now, when we're working with ourselves or our clients, our part that their parts are going to be organized on this triangle somewhere. And it's very common that these parts all have a relationship. Some are going to like the parts, like parts are going to like parts are going to be on the same team. And then there's going to be parts that don't like each other. There's going to be parts that are polarized and they, why do you and why should I? And they hold each other kind of at odds. And then there's whenever you're with a client and you hear them talking, they generally throw in, those nuggets of the exile. And they're not necessarily identified yet, but you can hear it just in the, well, I feel worthless or I don't feel like good enough. And you can just be like, yep, there's that exile. So you can create that triangle with your client and when you're listening to them. So the reactive parts of us on the firefighters, soothers, and distractors, they're oriented and they're looking at the exiles. They are in the internal world and they are oriented towards our vulnerability. So they are watching, I'm just going to use the term inner child. They're watching the younger parts of us and they're there to protect from overwhelm. So the way that they're in the system is that they're not looking to the outer world. They're not looking at other people. The only thing they're concerned about is, am I going to be vulnerable? When something happens to confirm an exile's belief, your firefighters, soothers, and distractors jump right in. So when a critic starts to, an external critic, mother, father, starts to come at you and tell you how poorly of a job you're doing, I can't believe you would do this, and you have a belief that I'm broken, I'm not good enough, your distractors and rage and firefighters and anger can come right up to put that pain out as quickly as possible. So our reactive parts jump out right away. If somebody says gives you like a sarcastic remark of like, yeah, good move, man, or an ironic comment of like, yeah, smooth move, man, and you kind of made a mistake and messed up, and you have a belief that I'm a mistake and I'm a mess up, most likely your reactive firefighter soothers are going to jump right in to put that out right away. So there's always the relationship. Whenever there is a reactive part, the bigger the reaction, the deeper the wound. The more intense there's a reaction, the more intense the wound is. Does that make sense? So if someone has a big, intense reaction, I am automatically have like a ton of compassion because I'm like, what's under that? What's going on there? And usually the reality of something and the impact of like what that reaction is are very misaligned. So whenever you notice somebody getting very reactive, someone having a big response to something, it's like, okay, where's the exile in there? Where's the wound in there? So I'm gonna pause there on the firefighters, soothers, and distractors. And the managers are oriented to the world around us. So our managers are looking to the status quo. They're looking to other people. They're looking for external validation. They're looking to people say, wow, look at how good I am. Look at how accomplished I am. Look at all the accolades and awards I have. That's what managers do. So they're not concerned about they're going to cover up the exiles by making sure you don't see them. Like, don't see my vulnerability, but like, this is what I do so you don't see it. I'm a perfectionist. I'm going to control all the situations. I'll be passive in conflict so that I don't have to be exposed. So your managers are managing other people. They're managing the impact and the judgments of other people. And then our exiles just hold those beliefs, as you know. So when somebody says, oh, I'm so controlling, or I'm very passive, or how are you with conflict? And they're like, well, I just like shut down. Those are the managers using a strategy. Just as our firefighters use a strategy, but they're a lot more reactive. They're emotionally driven. You can feel them in your body. It generally happens pretty quickly. I put my hand up a lot and then it just raises my hand for me automatically. So when, the most important part about these parts is that they are not their strategies. Like the parts are so much more than their strategies. An angry and rageful part has a strategy of anger and rage, but that's not actually who the part is. And it's like our job to help those parts kind of see that and appreciate that. So here is an example of much more managers, exiles, and soothers or firefighters. So I encourage you, if you can, take a screenshot of this. You can take out your phone. You can take a picture of it. I will attach these slides to the recording when it's ready. But just notice, what parts did you write down of yourself and where did they go on the triangle for yourself? And maybe there's a couple of parts in there that you might not have been aware of. But we can always be aware in our clients. If you read this list like every day for 5 days, you're going to start to see a lot of patterns with your clients, and especially with their intake calls. You're like, oh, there's that one, there's that one. And the goal of IFS is to bring balance to a system. And a lot of times this triangle is trying to find balance. So some days, you're going to have like a very, very high achiever, and your achiever is like going out and doing everything and like going really hard. And that scale is like this. And then it's like your soother needs to come in, and then he's like, I deserve this. I need to go get drunk, or I need to like just veg out on social media. There's nothing wrong there. But after 12 hours of Netflix, now the scale is tipped the other way. And so it's very unbalanced, but these managers and reactive parts are always kind of trying to find balance the best way they can. And when self is not there to understand and help, the parts are just doing their best. And that can be unconscious and very unaware. They could just unconsciously be acting. So in that dynamic, we can start to hold a lot of compassion of like when there's a big reaction, we know there's pain. When there's pain, we can just have compassion for that. And when there's somebody that's a big caretaker or deeply in despair or advocacy, like to an extreme degree, we can start to begin to have compassion for that of like, what's underneath that? What's underneath the strategy? What's the fear if you stopped doing those managerial things? And that's going to tell you where the exile is. So I'm going to stop sharing right there. Does anybody have any questions so far or need any kind of clarification on that? Or maybe just want to share like an aha moment or I don't get it. Tanner, I saw you type something and I'm not gonna look at the chat because I can get really distracted if I get lost in the chat. But if you want to unmute yourself and share, I would welcome that.
I was just asking if you've seen a part that's both a manager and a firefighter, because I have a client that I feel like has one, and it's so fascinating, kind of like flips and flops between the two roles. So I was just wondering if you could speak on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, firefighters are managers. And the intense and what I'm hearing there, Tanner, just help me out. It's like it sounds like the intensity flip-flops.
Sometimes the intensity no, it's actually pretty intense all the time. I feel like the clients often very blended with this part. And we've just recently, I think, been able to find differentiation. So it's not the intensity, but it's like the looking outward versus soothing inward, looking outward, but it's the same strategy. And it feels like the same part to me because I've tried to kind of parse out if it's different parts, but I was just seeing it as one. But it feels like it's a storyteller part. Sometimes the stories are to soothe internally, and sometimes the stories are to manage like an external perception of the client. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. And it depends on, I'd be really curious about like when and how it gets triggered, I guess, like when it gets activated and like what triggers or activates the storytelling. Like what's the sequence of events in that? And exploring that whole thing with it.
Yeah, that's a really good prompt. I think because the blending has been so present, I don't know if we've gotten like to sequencing yet, but that's a good little prompt for the next session.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Tanner. Linda.
What you just said there sort of answered my question, but maybe not really. My question is, how truly important is it to categorize, oh, this is a manager and this is a firefighter? And what I just heard was, well, sometimes like depending on what triggers it, you could, whether it's external or internal maybe, and then you could just maybe map out the system more effectively. But yeah,
I think when we're beginning IFS, we put a lot of weight into, well, is it a firefighter or is it a manager? Like we put a lot of effort into that. And, it's important to know those things simply for one reason. Firefighters need a lot of love because they spend a lot of time getting their asses kicked.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's easy to socially deprecate like a firefighting activity. Oh, you're doing drugs? How could you do that? How could you get so rageful and hurt your family like that? Like, oh, I can't believe you would do something like that. It's easy to criticize a firefighter, and a lot of times our firefighters aren't very socially acceptable. So I'm going to go out. Sorry, Linda, to go on a tangent with that, but it's just like
it makes sense. Yeah, no, it's answering my question. Yeah, but keep going. Yeah.
And like I know I would say in the past I've had a very firefighter led system when I was like 20 and I was like a professionally wounded teenager to like my early 30s. So I have a lot of compassion for firefighters, and it's like shit. I get it, man, and I know that the stronger that firefighter is, the deeper of a wound it's protecting, and so just like really showing it like extra amount of care and like really helping it reorient towards the present day, where it's like, who do you see when you look at me? Because we're always using transference, and like they're always projecting old things onto us and stuff. So it's like with a firefighter, it's like, who do you see when you look at me? What do you think my intention is? Because a lot of times firefighters are like, well, I don't care, like whatever. They don't care what other people think. Managers really care what other people think. Firefighters, they're like a honey badger. They don't give a fuck. They just like do their thing and they'll run over anything. So, yeah, knowing that too. Does that help, Linda? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I'm just reflecting on my own parts, and I feel like often I have firefighters and managers really then blended together, like working in tandem
Yeah.
a lot. And they're almost like indiscernible. But so I think that's the fascinating part, is to anyway, just reflect more on that. Thank you.
Yeah. And like parts have parts. And when a part is unconscious, like people are just acting and blended from a part, they don't have perspective on it. So they're just like, this is all one thing. But you could hear, like, a lot of times when you're with a firefighter or a manager, what are you concerned would happen if you stop doing this? That's like another part gets revealed.
Yeah. 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 There's so many layers that's why I think like just separating into manager firefighters seems so simplistic, and it's never like that.
Totally. Yeah. And managers can be reactive as well. And it's all just a way to help systemize it. And there's an ebb and a flow in it. So don't hold this is how it is. Like it's definitely an ebb and a flow, and there's a fluidity to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not all just black and white, just like life. Anyone else want to chime in here before we move on?
I was just going to say that I have found in my own personal work with IFS that it's so much easier for me to have a lot of compassion for my manager parts, and then a lot of judgment towards my firefighter parts. And then when I go into therapy, it's just so interesting, right? So my clients will also experience that, like a lot of judgment towards their firefighter parts, and able to step back and unblend much quicker with their manager parts and be more compassionate towards them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, Michelle.
Just curious. So when you said about firefighter parts being, they don't give a whatever.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's why I love work. Well, I don't now, but I loved working in addiction center, because at that point they have nothing more to lose. They're not these pretend not lying, but like looking good manager parts. They're just the real, honest, raw.
Right.
This is it. Is that at all an accurate thing? Like, even though they are managers of some sort trying to put things out, are firefighters just more honest?
Not necessarily, because they generally they'll be holding shame, which we're going to get into near the end of the call. And by the way, I just want to name this call might go over 90 minutes because I love talking about this stuff. So please excuse me if it does. It will be recorded. You can pick up where you left off. But they can be, and they can not be, right? Because they can be so shamed that they don't want to be seen. They don't want to show their face. That's like, don't look at what I do.
So like puffing up, feeling weak and puffing up to be strong.
Yeah.
So not necessarily. Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
And
you might get the brutally honest firefighters that that's a strategy of like, I'm going to be, yeah. So there's no right one way it's going to, like, everybody has a unique thumbprint of their parts. So, I can't say that's how it is.
Thank you. I just was curious if there was anything like that, because at least my firefighters are more honest. So thank you so much.
For sure. Yeah. So we're going to go into another experiential here, where everybody's going to participate. But I would like to ask for one volunteer that doesn't mind being recorded, and their face being out there. But I'm going to treat this like an intake call, and I want everybody to write down the parts that they hear on this intake call. So I'm going to do an intake call with someone, maybe like I'm hoping no longer than 15 minutes. But just hearing, like we're just going to hear someone talk and we're just going to write down all the parts that we notice and kind of what comes together there.
Afternoon. Would you be free to handle that?
Well, I mean, I'll be picking task work from
So
school.
Rita, I'm just going to mute you there. So would anybody be willing to volunteer for this? All right, Janet, Sarah, I'm going to put a number between 1. Yeah, Sarah, perfect. I'm going to put a number between 1 and 15 in the chat. If you anybody that wants to volunteer, just put a number in there, and I will place mine. There we go. Janet, you are the winner. Awesome. Thank you, Janet.
Sure.
So, yeah, we're just going to treat this like an intake call. If everybody could just start to write down all the parts. And Janet, is that okay with you that your parts are going to be observed by this group? Does anything come up for you there?
I feel ready. I need help. I'm just curious about the compartmentalization of each part. So I'm open to the feedback, and yeah.
Okay, good. All right, let me just give me 1 second here, get me set up. All right. So you already know quite a bit about IFS, Janet, because I know you. So I don't have to give you the whole spiel on it. But if you could just give me a snapshot of where are you today and where would you like to be in 12 months, a year?
So today I feel a lot of internal like pressure, like racing, my mind racing, my just pressure. It feels like excitement, borderline anxiety. It's the holiday week. I have like 2 or 3 reschedules every day because of Nutcracker rehearsal or choir performance, and I'm leaving for 2 weeks, and just feels like a lot of pressure. I'm feeling a lot of pride, in the parenting I've done and my caseload, which is really consistent and awesome and deep. And I'm also integrating a journey that I did recently. And so I'm very aware of a very scared little exiled part. I'm aware of it. And I'm becoming more and more aware of some unconscious ways that I push away what I want, which is closeness or intimacy. Right. So in a year, I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately. I just want to feel more trusting in the connections that I have in my life and open to intimacy and a relationship. It's been years that I've had this wall up that I haven't even been aware of because I've been in just survival mode.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Janet. Would you say that you're hard on yourself?
Yeah.
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 And what's the flavor of like being hard on yourself? What does that look like?
Okay, it's not cute. But I mean, it's a real, it sometimes comes up like it feels like Tourette's almost, and it's really intense. You fucking idiot. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
You fat, ugly cow. I mean, it's old and it's almost comical now because I can see it. I'll be like, okay, where is that coming from? It's so deep,
Yeah. Yeah. And when that comes in, I know you can see it, but like what happens when that kind of internal narrative comes in?
Well, I think what happens is it's very connected to my digestive system and my heart just contracted. It just it just hijacks my nervous system. But that usually is beneath my conscious level, but I'm more and more conscious of it. So now I'm just noticing like, oh, my chest is tight. Now I'm racing. Now I'm, you know, burying the vulnerability even deeper and deeper, because I'm not even familiar with what it feels like to be really just vulnerable in a continuous way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And what does vulnerability look like for you?
I don't even know.
Yeah.
I think I used to associate vulnerability with like the really dysfunctional relationships I was in.
Yeah.
Um, and but now I've like done enough work to realize like vulnerability is just actually being in self and being open to people, versus being super like talking about all the interesting things in my head or talking about clients or, you know, being in, I guess, the storytelling mode and the therapist mode, um, or, the party drinking hangout mode, you know.
Yeah.
So just being like sober and open to life and aware of my boundaries and entitled to have them without fear that I'll lose people if I need to set boundaries.
Yeah. Is there a fear around setting boundaries?
Well, there's a one part of me that's really, really good at it.
Yeah.
Uh, but when I start to like this is what it's been so aware of these past few years, single parenting and having a full practice, is that my deepest intimacy is with my clients, that feeling of just connected with people. And I feel safe there because I'm the therapist and there's a boundary, right? So in life, when I'm getting to know someone new, if I start to care about them, yeah, all the old like, oh, now I have to worry, is like your trauma going to come up, or is something going to be unsafe, or do I have to take care of you? Like I switch out of like being in me and aware of like what brings me pleasure and just feeling of ease and contentment. Like truly closeness brings up this hypervigilance.
Yeah.
So I'm good at keeping a big network of people at an arm's length,
Yeah. Okay.
but yeah, I'm just like terrified of I think there's so many. It's the borderliney like wound of like, I'm afraid that if I let you in, suddenly I'm gonna have to be totally responsible. I have to keep you away in order to stay safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. So, Janet, what I'm hearing there is like your overarching goal is like you just want to be closer to people.
Yeah, I would like to feel like I can have an intimate relationship where I can like co-regulate and have a nice home with someone one day, you know.
Mhm. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share with us or want us to know?
Oh yeah, like I'm starting to feel the sadness come up, which feels okay. Yeah. And I've done 30 years of work in all sorts of different modalities, and yeah, I think no, I'll just be curious what people are seeing because I'm needing always a little more support to feel. I think, yeah, worthy. I think there's a worthiness thing, like worthy of the love that comes in, able to receive it.
Yeah. So is there a part of you that feels not worthy?
Oh, I think that's, yeah, I think that's this scared, very, very terrified little girl that I discovered on my journey that I did recently. She's just like buried like a porcupine or a turtle, just frozen in a scared, not wanting to be her place. It's old.
Mhm. Thank you, Janet. Yeah. Does that feel okay to you to wrap up here? Do you
Yeah.
need to?
No, I'm good. Yeah, good.
Well, thank you so much for bringing that in and allowing us to witness that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to check with Janet. Is it okay if I use your mind map as like a just an example in a teaching thing right now? And you can say
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm going to bring up my notes, and I'm going to show you how I organize them. So you can this is like how I take IFS notes, and maybe this will inspire something, or you can compare it to how you do your own notes. I'm going to share my screen here again in a second. There we go. Sent. Okay. So, well, no, didn't want to do that. I think I'm going to have to do it like this. So going back to Janet's kind of world here, these are all the parts that I noticed as she was talking. So you can compare kind of what parts you noticed when she was doing this. But now what I do is start to look at like what are her managers and what are the reactive parts in there. So there's pressure, there's a racing mind. There's a part that feels anxious that might be the same part, not sure, but could be very closely related. So I'd probably put those two next to each other. There's this part that feels pride and like good about herself, which is awesome. So I'd put this in like a kind of like the more grounded table, the more adult self-like parts that can hold a bit more compassion. We have a scared exile, so that's going to go down at the bottom of the triangle. And she mentioned that it was a porcupine and it did not feel worthy. She mentioned that she had in the past parts that were drinking parts. So just to notice and just keep there, we don't need to do anything with them. We don't need to do anything with any of these, but it's just to kind of bring awareness to it. We have a part that pushes away intimacy. And that what comes up for me there is like it might be a reactive manager. It might be a firefighter and a manager, depending on how intensely it pushes away intimacy. Like when it gets close, what's the pushback on that immediately? And then we have a critic. So I put our critic under a reactive part because the critic sounds like it can be really strong, really mean, really quick. And so that would go on this side of the table. And I don't know about this one. This might go over here, but it might stay here. We have hypervigilance. So that would be a manager. That's a part that's using a strategy in order to keep her safe or the vulnerability from coming up. There's a part in the gut, which I'm not sure, but if we fleshed it out, Janet would tell us. She would let it know. But for right now, my intuition is telling me that it's kind of connected to the exile, and I don't know if that's right or not. But that's just where my brain goes. Vulnerable trauma, we don't know what that is, but there's vulnerability there. We know that there's stories there because we're going to get into that in the next teaching portion of this. And again, she has parts that say probably to these parts over here, be more open. Like this part says, these parts can't be open, and this part is saying be more open. So we have a polarization there. The more that she can't open, the more that be more open probably gets fired up. And the more that be more open gets fired up, the more that these parts are probably going to shut down. And then we have a boundary setter, which sounds super helpful. And it might also be like a very strong boundary setter, like a reactive boundary setter. And I don't know that yet because we haven't dove into that too much. But that is kind of how I would organize the mind map. And so, Janet, just as you look at this, does this look accurate? Would you change anything?
I think like Linda had said, I get super confused about what's a manager and what's a firefighter. And like I don't know that it matters, but
That's right.
I was getting feedback recently, like it would be really helpful if you were more clear about your parts. I'm like, okay, so that's kind of why I'm here. So I'm gonna, because there's a spectrum, like the pressure racing mind part is like, you know what? I'm spinning 10 plates in the air, so it's helping me. But also when I'm circling the house and I forget something over there and now I'm over here, but I forgot that over there, like then is that a firefighter? Or like So I just feel like there's this kind of a continuum between the manager and the firefighter, like each one, like the vigilance, right? That helps me not forget the thing over there. And on the
Yeah.
other hand, it makes me tight and closed. And so I don't, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, at the end of the day, all of these parts just want to be seen, heard, and valued. Every part just wants to be seen, heard, and valued. And when they're reactive, when they are active, they are not seen, they are not heard, and they're not being valued. So whenever you notice like a reactivity with a client, you can really get curious of like, what do you want me to understand about you? What am I not getting? What do you want me to understand about you so that you can soften or relax? Because the more seen and heard we are, the more it's like, oh, okay. And the example I use is like, if you've ever been in a partnered relationship and your partner comes up to you and says, you know what, I'm really sorry for how I acted the other day, or I'm really sorry for whatever it is, and the relief that like, it's like, oh, like you get me, I can finally relax. And so when we can hold that, like, I get you, to our children, to our colleagues, to our partners, whatever that is, it's like, I see you and I get you. And when we feel seen and understood, there's just that like access to self that can come online. So it doesn't really matter. Like, again, it's like, yes, it matters. And it's like, it's okay if it's doesn't fit into like a manager or a firefighter, but, just really understanding of like this part, especially firefighters probably feel misunderstood, judged, criticized, pushed away, not loved, not appreciated. And so it's like, my compassion radar is like love up on that firefighter because it has probably never felt love before. And it can even be like scary to it. It can be dismissive of it. How is it to receive my appreciation right now? And that firefighter be like, well, whatever. And that's cool, but just keep on being with it. Like, just keep on showing it that permissiveness. And like, yeah, it makes sense to me that you would do that. Like, your job is important. It has been important. I won't go in this too deeply, but like their adaptive strategy in the past is now maladaptive. How they had to adapt. They had to be reactive in order to not get walked all over, not have dad, be physically abusive or whatever it is. It's like, man, that's really important stuff. Like, thank God you were there. And let's update you to the current day where that's no longer happening. And that can help the part be like, oh, would you like a more effective way to keep Janet safe, or whoever that's going to be? And they're just invitations. We're constantly just dropping invitations into these parts to help them feel more open. So the way that, with this parts taking thing, when I begin work with a client, and I'm going to talk about this more, I'm just going to touch on it now. I will always start my, intention is driven by inspiration. Agenda is driven by fear. Intention is driven by inspiration. Agenda is driven by fear. I have to do this because if I don't, something terrible is going to happen. That's an agenda. My intention for my client's healing is I love critics, and the system cannot move when critics are present. When critics have a hold on someone's system, they are the linchpin to anything further happening. That's all. When I hear that, like, that is my first go-to every time. Any self-judgment, self-deprecation, self-criticism, like, those are the warriors that have had, I even feel emotional saying that. It's like, they're the warriors that have just absorbed all the shit in someone's life that had to turn it inward to protect their vulnerability. So, having this breakup, it's like, I'm gonna pull up another slide in a second here, but I'm just gonna go over a couple more note-taking slides here, just to bring this into, say there's another intake call, or this is in a session. This is an actual session. So somebody comes in and they want to say, I'm really angry. Okay, well, how long has your anger been around for? That's one of my first questions all the time. How long has this part been around for? I'll say it's forever. It's been around since I was the young boy, 6 or 7. So take notes on that. Does this energy like remind you of anybody, or like, where have you seen this before? Oh, my dad has it. So it's like, okay, cool. Like that is like legacy burden. There's some kind of legacy piece there or inherited piece. So it's like, does your anger mimic your father? Well, it's like, yeah, that's how I learned, And then you can go on the classic IFS questions. What are you concerned would happen if you didn't get so angry? Do you like being angry, or just think you have to be to help it kind of like reorient to there's another way? Well, didn't want to do that. Reshare that there. So, how do you feel towards your anger? Well, I hate it. All it does is cause problems. Why is my anger so strong? There's a critic and a judgment here holding it in place. So right away you have a just from asking how do you feel towards a part, it's going to illuminate kind of the inner world of how these parts relate to each other. So how do you feel towards it? And it's like, well, I hate it. All it does is cause problems. It's such a waste of energy. It's critical and judgmental. So right now I'm like, all right, that's where I'm going first. And then another part says, well, I like it. It makes me feel powerful. It makes me have control. It gets my needs met. And it's like, yeah, it is important. Parts can like other parts. And this doesn't need to be, this sounds like a bit of a manager, but that's like, it doesn't need to be like a focal part. It's just like, yeah, we're not getting rid of your anger. If we work with your anger, you can reassure your I like it part that we're not getting rid of anything that you don't want to be getting rid of. But would your anger like to have strategies that are more effective? We help these young parts caught in a role mature. We help them like grow up. And I don't mean that as like you need to grow up. I mean, it is like, man, it's exhausting for a 6-year-old boy to be having adult relationships. It's exhausting for a little girl inside to be in a relationship with someone that doesn't see and hear them. What if your adult, what if your big heart and wise mind can come in and manage those relationships? That inner child, I'm just going to use that for reference, doesn't need to do that. What if you could do that? As being a hope merchant. And whenever there is that manager, whether it's anger, criticism, passivity, aggression, whatever, there's always, who is it protecting? What's going on in there? And we can always just, we can always discover who is it protecting. This is what I'm saying of like, these are the things that we can know before the client even knows. It's like, you're angry. I know that there's a vulnerable part in there that you're protecting. So what is that? And we get there by asking the questions like, what are you concerned would happen if you didn't get so angry? I'd be abused. I'd be walked all over. So there's a part of you that got abused when you were younger. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So that goes underneath my exile. And you can also get that answer by, what's your hope for the client? Well, I hope that, I'm just going to use Jen as example. Well, I hope she has better relationships. And there's always an inference. So you're always trying to listen for what's not being said, but what's being inferred. So if you want to have better relationships, is there a part in there that doesn't have good relationships? I want to be better at speaking for when I'm angry. So is there a part in there that gets overly angry, that other parts would say get overly angry? You listen for what is not being said. You listen for the inference on the other side of it. Another example, if I didn't get so angry, I wouldn't be heard. So there's a part in there that doesn't feel heard. How long ago does that go back? So we're always trying to listen. And I know that when there is a reactive part, it's like, I'm here because of my anger. Which parts hate it? Which parts drug that anger into here? You know, what are you doing here and why are you coming to see me? When they start to say the list of issues, what's on the other side, criticizing it, judging it, hating it, blaming it for being the accuser of all the problems in its life. So always be curious about what's on the other side of every part. Because wherever there is one part, there is always polarized parts. So when we're parts mapping our own internal world, always ask, how do I feel towards this part? And parts are thoughts, feelings, emotions. And so as we get to know this, it's like when I have thoughts, when I have ruminations, when I have like somatic experiences, you can sit with that. And it's like, okay, I have this thing in my chest. How do I feel towards it? Well, I don't like it. All right. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's been there my whole life and it's annoying. It like makes it hard to move in the day. But wherever you have a part, you will have an opposing part. Wherever there's a yes, there's a no. Wherever there's a no, there's a yes. Everything is yin and yang. Everything is both and. And the more that we can work with our black and white parts that don't see that, the more that it's like, and I'm not saying I get rigid. Like, I'm not saying I'm immune to rigidity. Like, I think everybody can be in a rigid part at some points, but it's always like, okay, what's on the other side here? So when you hear like the definity of this is who I am, or this is what it is, it's like, what's over there? And being able to hold that. Two things can be true at once. We can love our kids and they can drive us absolutely insane at the same time. Can love our partners and they can drive us absolutely crazy at the same time. So I'm going to get into the common structure of exiles. Now, if anybody has not read the book IFS for Guilt and Shame by Martha Sweezy, it's probably one of the best IFS books I've ever read in terms of how to support shame and guilt and shutdown. So this is kind of I like to put the flavor of everything we're taking and then putting it into this concept right here. But there's basically 6 stages. This is from Martha Sweezy. There's 6 stages that happen where your protective system develops. And you're going to find yourself working somewhere on these 6 steps in order to get to a bad thing happen. So the first thing that happens is you get caught in a shitty scenario. And that could be a big traumatic event, a sudden loss. It could be death by 1,000 cuts. When I was younger, my grandmother used to walk by me and grab my love handles and go, he's got a little tire on him. And now I have like the worst body image issues ever because I'm like, oh God, my tire's sticking out. And I got to like be very careful of that. So, like a bad thing happened, like one big T trauma or many little T traumas. And I'm really starting to open my work up with ADHD. I have ADHD. I'm late diagnosed. And I took a support group from Carol Shilliday that like totally opened up my world of like, oh my God, my whole life makes sense. And people with ADHD get their asses kicked, just as like they hear 25,000 more negative comments by the time they're 10 than anybody else. So a bad thing happened. It's like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you? You can't do this? You can't pay attention? Why can't you read that email? Just always hearing those little cuts, you really start to develop the belief that I'm an idiot or that I'm bad. So the second thing is that the bad thing happened. You take on a lesson in belief that I am bad. So where's the shame in a system? And that's the exiles, right? The exiles are buried. And now what we do with exiles, if we take it into shadow work or Jungian psychology, is we push those parts of us into the shadows. We push those parts of us out of our consciousness. And this becomes unconscious behavior. We can't metabolize as children what happened to us. And we can't make sense of it, but we can take on the belief that I fucked up. It's like the easiest thing to do there for a kid. So they take on the belief that I'm bad. I must have caused this, traumatic experience. It's my fault. And it's like, it doesn't need to be an overtly, it's my fault, but it's like an underlying soul level feeling of I caused this. Because you tell people like, yeah, I know it's not my fault. And it's like, yeah, it's not your fault, but do you know it's not your fault?
Mm.
Your soul and your head are two different things, your heart and your head. The longest journey a person ever takes is the 18 inches from the head to their heart. And when we can start to connect with that, that's where you got to heal it to feel it. That's where the healing can really start to take place. So this is unconscious behavior, and we keep this behind a curtain. So the first line of defense, and this is why I'm so passionate about the inner critic, is our inner critic. That keeps it out of sight. That keeps it from being exposed. So that critic is your first line of defense to your vulnerability. And again, this isn't like a definitive thing, but critics will shame you first, like your internal self, so that the outside shame of people don't affect you as harshly. It's like softening the blow for your system. And that's when I say like, that's a hell of a job. And going back to the intake call, wherever there is shame and an exile, there is always a shamer. And wherever there is a shamer, there is always a shamed. So if somebody's very critical, very judgmental, very critical of themselves, who are they criticizing? Who do they see? Who are they judging? Who are they looking at in the internal? Who do you see when you look at Kim? I'm sorry, you're right there. So you see, if we're working with Kim's internal critic, it's like, who do you see when you look at Kim? Because that critic is not judging self, but it's probably, going back to the ADHD experiment, the critic is probably judging that young boy that didn't know he had ADHD that was getting his ass kicked. What's wrong with you? Why would you do that?
Mm.
Critics don't see, they got blinders on. All they're concerned about is keeping this veil up. And I'm like, oh man, like, fuck, you work hard. Then you have your protectors that say never again. You're going to find your protectors somewhere along your IFS journey with your clients. And it's like, I have to be perfect so that this stuff never happens again. Going back to never again, the bad thing. I have to do this so this never happens again. They do that unconsciously. Look at how good I am. Look at all the accolades I have. Look at how much money I make. Look at all the things I have. Because if I have all this stuff, it won't ever happen again. So when you hear those strategies that are being used, it's like, yeah, like where's your exile? Why did you, and it's not judgmental because there's a lot of gifts in this as well. It's a yin and a yang. It's a both and. It's like, yeah, your pain made you so successful and you're here with me for a reason because it doesn't sound like it's working anymore. So you have your never again protectors, and then you have your projections. So when we project onto other people, when we're judging other people, I'm not going to wear this shame. I'm going to just like, that's you. I don't want to feel this pain. I'm going to put on you.
Mm.
So whenever we're projecting, that's kind of like the fifth. And then we have the sixth stage, which is firefighters avoidance. And these are kind of like, the outer layers of the onion. They're like, they are like the ones that keep all of the energy out from hurting the exile. And it's like when that I am bad gets triggered, boom, you're right on 6. So sometimes we have to work from 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the exit from all of this is that a bad thing happened, it wasn't your fault. And when all of the parts can see that, that's when the map can start to bring balance back to the system. That's when all these parts can then begin to get along with each other. They can start to understand where the balance is coming from and be like, yeah, like when we unburden parts, and just because we unburden a part once doesn't mean we're not going to do it several times, because it's a constraint release model. Meaning there might be that exile might be holding on to a lot because a lot of bad things happen to him. I swear to God, I've done so much work around my mom, but God damn, it doesn't stop. And it's just like, it just keeps on unburdening other things. I'm like, damn it, haven't I done this? Like, I've done everything. I've beat this thing to death, but there's just still more. So, it's just like, yeah, that's okay. But like really understanding that a bad thing happened and it wasn't your fault and you were probably right, whatever you were feeling. So, yeah, I'm going to pause there. And any questions? Sarah, I see your hand up there.
Yes, that hit me pretty deeply when you said, I've done all this work and I still keep kind of doing this work. And I find myself and I also find clients continuously saying, like, I thought I did this. And I feel like parts work is just this ongoing thing that we just keep doing and we keep working with, and that there is no end mark. But sometimes that can feel so overwhelming too.
Absolutely.
For journey.
Yeah, the language that I like to use is I really view my IFS sessions like going to the gym for my mind. Like I know I am performing my best when I have my regular IFS sessions, weekly or biweekly, and I'm taking care of that part. I'm taking care of my parts. I mean, the work never truly ends. You're going to find guidance and help along your journey as a human, and sometimes it'll be a therapist or a spiritual guide or a shaman or whatever it's going to be. A book, Rumi, whatever it is, God, Jesus, church, religion, whatever it's going to be. It's gonna take you on a journey, but the IFS journey, is going to take you as far as it wants to, and as long as your parts are willing to engage until they no longer deem it helpful, or they're like, all right, that was good. I'm going to look for something else now, and that's okay. Anybody else have anything that comes up for them around all of this?
Can I ask a question?
Of course, Lise.
So with all the work that you've done, Trevor, and your experience with the parts that keep calling for more work, do you ever notice that an unburdening session, for whatever reason, because it was with a particular therapist, or maybe it happened at a certain time, that the unburdening worked better or it was more effective, and therefore kind of catapulted you out of the same spiral thinking? My point is that sometimes when you hear people talk about their success with IFS, it sounds almost like too good to be true. And then, unlike my personal experience, is that I keep on feeling like I should have reached not the end of the situation, but like I feel like I'm not reaching that level of relief as finitely as I wish I could feel it, the way I've heard other people speak of it. And I'm just wondering if maybe it has more to do with the unburdening portion.
Yeah, my response to that would be, it sounds like there's still things that are unseen and unheard, and maybe not, like there's parts in there that don't feel fully witnessed. And that's not a bad thing. It's just sounds like there's more there. I've had, I'd say, what's the word I'm looking for? sporadic unburdenings. Just in like my session this week was just like a, oh my God, that's not mine. Okay. Like, Jesus, like, how was I holding on to this for so long? And my part got updated, came into the present day, and that was it. And it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I don't know if my reactivity or how I'm moving in the world has necessarily changed that much at this moment. But that was like a sporadic unburdening. I've had unburdenings that are like extremely profound and visual and long, and those are super helpful as well too. And I've had unburdenings where I'm like, what was that? Like, what just happened? That was an unburdening. Like, okay. Like, I mean, I had a lot of skeptics. And I would just say like, yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean like I still get triggered. I still have a hard time sometimes. But it's a hell of a lot better than it was 10 years ago. I can definitely hold a lot more in relationships and with people than a long time ago. So, and I think it's been like, a bunch of little tiny things that get us there. So I think that, yeah, it's almost like there's a bit of a, like getting the hopes too up, like, oh, like this is going to be the answer, the golden ticket to it all. And it's like, fuck, I'm still here.
Okay, I appreciate that. Also, I think too, I forget where I was. And it's almost like I wish I could remember more clearly how the place I came from, because I know that there has been improvement. It's not like I don't know that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Do your parts see the current space that they're in, at least those ones that do want relief? And do they see the resources that you have available to them? Like, have you updated those parts?
I attempt to care for the parts after I meet them.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that I'm placating them, and I'm saying the thing but not embodying the thing. I think I recognize that about myself, that I get better success when I actually, when my self energy actually embodies the new way of being or thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing, Lise.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anyone else have any questions, comments? Janet, yeah.
One thing I feel like I'm wanting more of, and maybe it's just a separate training, is how to bring someone back into self. And I'll just also say, in my experience, like the more I revisit the parts and get clear and have more self, the more I'm aware of this, like just fugue, this chronic, a little bit of mild dissociation to everything. But anyway, as a therapist, sometimes I'm just wanting to help people. I've experienced self, I've done tons of meditation, so I know what that feels like to have an objective, calm witness. But for people that don't, yeah, do you have any, like, I don't know,
direct access and bring your heart to them? Like,
yeah,
if they've never felt self before, it's like we can be the model of that for them.
Yeah.
We can hold that compassion for them when they can't hold it for themselves. And when that starts to get modeled for them, they can be like, oh, like maybe I can do that too.
Yeah. I think I wonder, at what point do you move from direct access to now you do it?
Yeah.
Like, now you can do that for yourself, like, or where is there a teaching moment to?
There's there's a very specific set of questions that I ask in direct access that will evoke compassion. Like, that's what you're trying to do in direct access, is like it's so easy to judge ourselves, especially the parts of ourselves that why we're in therapy session or why we're in a room, right? And so it's like, oh, this part just causes problems. And it's like, I know that part is protecting something else. So I'm like already feeling compassionate towards it. And the more that we can model that and like, yeah, well, like, what's it like to be you? How is it for you to hold on to this? How long have you been doing this for? You know, who do you see when you look at the client? How do you think they feel towards you? What are you concerned would happen if you stop doing what you're doing? What's your hope for the client? You know, that then it starts to open like, oh, like its perspective starts to like become a little bit bigger. And that's where there's a natural shift. I notice that as I'm doing direct access, there's like an opening. Like I'll notice my compassion get bigger and bigger. And when I notice that, then it's like, how do you feel towards this part now? So, and that has to happen a lot with inner critics, because how do you feel towards your inner critic? Well, I hate it. Like everybody hates their inner critic, right? So it's like having a lot of like respect and love for inner critics, which I'm going to invite everyone into a next container with inner critics, so that we can be with that, with direct access, asking it the right questions to get it to soften. And before I go into that, Sarah.
Yeah, so I just have a question about a client specifically that has, now I'm just trying to understand it. So there's a critical part that continues to judge the drinking part, but the drinking part's just trying to numb out, right? And I've constantly seen those two things as like both firefighters, and they're kind of polarized and in conflict, and it's been really difficult for me to kind of separate the two because they're constantly at it with one another. And so how like what is your technique on trying to kind of separate those a little so there's some clarity space?
Yeah, I love that, Sarah. Again, you know, no, the Mike Elkins quote: "No change can take place when moral judgment and criticism is present." So I'm looking at that critic immediately, and again, there's like a protocol with critics that you can go through, and get them to soften, understand why they learned that, how they learned that, they like being critical. And we help them release kind of the strategy that they had to take on. So where did you learn to be so critical? Do you like being critical? What lessons and beliefs did you take on from being critical? Can you see that this is something you had to do and it's not actually who you are? Yeah, I'll stop there just because it's getting into, you know, a critic thing. But Marwan.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm still fairly new to IFS, and just I'm thinking of clients I've worked with who, for example, have the very monotonous voice, you know, the severe depression. There's like the chronic emptiness, the disconnection from emotions. And I can see that being an exile, but then I also see them using, let's say, mechanisms that would indicate like a manager as well, you know, like intellectualization, you know, repression, suppression, whatnot. So yeah, I'd like to get your take on that.
Yeah, it's depends on what their strategy is. Like, you know, are they numbing out to protect? Are they numbing out to protect from overwhelm, or are they completely shut down and hypo aroused? You know, and they like, if they're hypo aroused, it's like depends. Like, are they depressed? Are they feeling like they don't have capacity to take anything on? You know, and when I'm with a hypo aroused person, meaning like very shut down and helplessness, I always want to try to find their anger. Like, where's your spark? You know, anger is really important, and anger creates movement. And it's so easy to say like, well, anger's bad and it's like not that good, but like anger is an emotion like any other, and we need it. And it does create movement. Like that's how our whole political landscape shifts and slides, and that's how relationships end and you set boundaries. Like, so, you know, whenever there is a shutdown, it's like I view anger as like the spark plug to that. And like, where is that? Is it suppressed? What's wrong with like a lot of people don't have a relationship with it. And so, yeah, just looking at the strategies, like what are you concerned would happen if you didn't shut down or if you weren't helpless? and it's like, well, that's just who I am, that's an exile. If I wasn't like this, I would be overwhelmed with emotion. That's a strategy. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm kind of wrapping around my head around it.
Just ask it, what is a concern would happen if you weren't like this? And what the answer to that is like, well, that's just how I feel and who I am as a person. It's like, that's probably exile territory. They had to be shut down. Well, what does it feel like to be shut down? How long has it been there? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Marwan. So just quickly here before we come to an end, I'm going to be launching a small container with 6 participants, the critic container, where we learn how to work with critics. And you're going to work with your own critic, and you're going to help other people work with their critics. So it's a container where you will be able to transform your own critic and become a master at working with other critics, because you'll see 6 sessions with 6 people, and the critic is going to show up in a bunch of different ways. So you'll get to see all the different flavors of how they show up. And it's a great, like, I'm just so passionate about working with that first kind of layer that wants to keep everything behind the curtain. Because like, as the critic is there, it keeps everything knotted up. And whenever you're not noticing changes or things are stagnant, it's probably because there is a stuckness, a mud, a blanket, something that's keeping it there, because it just creates a complete tension on the whole system. So I'll send all you guys an email based on that coming up here whenever this is done. And yeah, it was great to be with you all. So good to spend the afternoon with you. Have a beautiful day, everyone.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. And just give me a couple days for the recording. Hey, Sophie. Oh, she's gone. Terry, glad you made it. Bye. Bye, Nancy.